Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Great Tree Zen Temple. At the moment, they are going through their monthly sesshin, and Teijo will be our speaker this morning. And we would ask her to open the sutra, please.
And unsurpassed. So turn the volume all the way down. And unsurpassed, penetrating, and perfect Dharma is rarely met with even in 100,000 million kalpas. Having it to see and listen to, remember and accept, I vow to taste the truth of the Tathagata's teaching.
And now a brief message on the dana.
Good morning. In Buddhism, when practitioners share their understanding of the teachings and practice, it is offered freely as a practice of dana paramita. Dana is a Pali word that means generosity or to give freely, and this practice is done without expectation of getting something in return. This is the spirit of speaking about the Dharma. Other ways to practice dana are to offer support to those who share the teachings, to support places of spiritual practice, and to give without judgment or expectation when opportunities arise. And those who share the teachings at Great Tree do so on a dana basis. Please support their practice by giving what you can. And I'll put into the Zoom chat a link for where you can donate online or send in checks to the physical address.
We all know Teijo. She is the teacher and priestess, abbess at the Great Tree. And she has been ordained for over 40 years. She was a student of Katagiri Roshi's and got Dharma transmission from him. And we're looking forward to hearing from her today. Thank you.
I don't know where I want to start. Last week, we heard a story that comes from the sutra, the Angulamala Sutra, about the monk Angulamala. And I think it's on our YouTube channel if you didn't see it, but Reverend Isan Koyama told the story. And I'm not going to tell the whole story, but the gist of it is that Angula means fingers and mala means necklace. Like sometimes Buddhists wear malas. And Angulamala was called that because he was a murderer that he put the fingers of his victims in a necklace around his neck. And he was trying to get 100 victims. He was trying to murder 100 people, get 100 fingers, and he was on his 100th finger when he encountered Buddha. And so he decided Buddha was the person that he was going to get the last finger from. So he went after Buddha, and Buddha was just walking along, just very normally. But somehow Angulamala couldn't catch up with him. That's the way the story goes. And finally, he just got really mad and he said, "Stop." And Buddha said, "No, you stop." And Angulamala had a big awakening, and he became a monk and a follower of Buddha. Now, I said that in the story, it says that Angulamala originally was from a very good family. He was very erudite, and he wanted to become a monk, and he was a very good monk. But for some reason, the other monks or somebody got jealous of him and told stories about him. And so, he was actually kind of banished from the monastery, or he left the monastery, and he became a serial killer. And I can't help but think that what happened when Buddha said stop was that it somehow, the way it was said, completely interfered with Angulimala's direction of killing the Buddha. It kind of, somehow the way that he said it got in the way of that, and Angulimala for a moment dropped it. Like when there's some big shock in your life, maybe you're doing a lot of stuff, and someone dies suddenly. All of a sudden, all of those things that you have to do kind of disappear, and everything gets focused on, dealing with that death in whatever way. So that's kind of, I feel like that's kind of what happened. And you hear about this in Zen, someone awakening when the teacher hits the floor or something like that, or awakening from getting hit over the head, or hearing a drop of water or something. It's just that moment of something that stops that thinking. Every year at Halloween, whatever Sunday, whatever family meditation is closest to Halloween, we do something called pumpkin meditation. And what it is they tell a story. It's a Buddhist tale. It's a traditional Buddhist tale about, there's different versions of it, but this is the version I like, about someone, a farmer who had a pumpkin patch and loved to just sit on her porch and watch the pumpkin patch grow. And one day she was making dinner and she heard all this noise outside. And so she went out, and the pumpkins were all kind of arguing with each other, competing. I'm biggest, I'm smartest, you're stupid, saying things that were not nice to each other. And it kept accelerating. And finally the farmer said, stop. Shh. Everyone be quiet like this. And she sat down into meditation. We have a little period of meditation that's called Everyone Becomes Pumpkins. So the farmer says, now be quiet. And the pumpkins were quiet all night. And the next morning, and the farmer went to bed. The next morning, she went out and she said, she heard everybody was really happy and they were chattering and laughing. And she said, what did you learn? And they said, well, we learned that we're all connected. We all have the same, our stems are all connected by this long vine. So we're all the same. We feel the same rain, we feel the same sun. And that made them happy. And I've been thinking a lot about what is Bodhisattva practice. In Soto Zen, I think this is Mahayana Buddhist actually. There are the 15 Bodhisattva precepts that we receive when we receive the precepts. And 3 of them are taking refuge or returning to. The Japanese word means to return home. Taking refuge in Buddha, to return home to Buddha. To, in other words, awaken to our Buddha nature, to return to our Buddha nature is things as they really are in this moment. So it's really to return to the present moment. That's Shikantaza. And to return to the Dharma. The Dharma is usually considered to be the teachings, but the Dharma is really truth. The teachings point to truth. or all, it said everything is a Dharma. Everything in the phenomenal world is Dharma. And Sangha. That's what we've been talking about this year. What is Sangha? The community, Thich Nhat Hanh calls it the community of mindful harmony. So returning to that recognition of the relationship that we have with others. And Sangha is an opportunity to practice the letting go that goes with that. Because we all come with our own ideas about how things should be or how things are. And sometimes we have different ideas about that. So when we live with other people, when we interact with other people, and we work with other people, whatever kind of Sangha you are part of, your family is Sangha. That's an opportunity to let go of our perceptions of how things should be or how things are, and see and experience things as they really are. And I told these two stories because they're both about stopping. But the second one particularly is really what Zazen is about, what meditation is about. It's returning to our experience of our relationship, returning to the truth of life, which is that things are always changing, and that we're part of everything, and returning to Buddha nature. Dogen Zenji says everything is Buddha nature. Everything is Buddha nature. Not everything has Buddha nature. He says if you say that, then you're thinking about things as individualistic, but everything is Buddha nature. We're all part of the same reality. And when Dogen Zenji says when we recognize this, we can't break the precepts. And that recognition is really stop. That recognition is, I think, is bodhicitta. And I've been thinking a lot about bodhicitta lately. And I actually started with what is bodhisattva, and then I thought, then immediately, bodhicitta is the intention of bodhisattva. So bodhisattva is an awakened being, and bodhicitta is an awakened mind. Bodhi is awakened, and citta is mind. So it's said that bodhicitta is the way-seeking mind. It's the mind that awakens and has the understanding. You might call it understanding. The spirit of bodhisattva, which is that we are all part of the same life, and we do not exist separate from everything else. And that's really, really important for us to recognize, because not only does it help us see where we're caught in our perceptions, because we're constantly bumping up against others, just like those potatoes in the bucket that you put in a little water and they all roll around and they all wash each other. That's the way Sangha is. And but also the Sangha, the Maha Sangha, which is the great Sangha, the Sangha that is not just, doesn't just consist of humans, it consists of all humans and all beings. That is our support. We are not in this alone. And that's a great thing. And when we practice together, we can feel that support. So anyway, I've been thinking about bodhicitta, and I thought, well, what is bodhicitta really? what is the way seeking? What is it that we awaken to that causes us to want to practice, and also that we return to? What is that bodhicitta? Someone just arrived. And I thought, well, what caused that awakening that brought us to this practice? I once heard someone say, most people come to Zen practice because of some big difficulty in their life. And in my case, that was true. And so I thought, really, what happens when we have some difficulty is that we have to let go of something. It's like we're being forced to let go of something. Maybe we feel that we failed in something. It's not working out the way we wanted. So at some point, we have to let go either of the idea that it has to be the way we think it should be, or just walk away from it altogether, what we often do. But if we realize how our thinking is getting in our way, how our thinking is causing us to grasp and attach on to, it is an attachment. It's attachment to a particular way, which is what we want to do. And immediately at that moment, we experience the impermanence of life and also the interconnectedness of life. And one time I was transcribing one of Kadagiri Roshi's lectures. I was trying to understand something. And so I was that's the way I learn, is I transcribe. So I was trying to figure out what he was saying. And I was supposed to be giving a talk about this particular thing. And I was feeling just so, like almost the more I knew, the less I knew. And I just felt like, I don't think I can do this. And then Kadagiri Roshi said at that point, we live by our effort, but not only by our effort, we are supported by all beings. That's that support. That's that. We don't have to do it ourselves. I was thinking this morning about when I received the precepts for the first time. It was in 1977. And I had been practicing at Minnesota Zen Center for about a year. And so when Roshi announced that we could sign up to receive the precepts, I thought, well, I haven't been doing this practice long enough. So, and besides, I don't know if I'm a Buddhist. I thought I was sort of a Taoist at the time. But somehow I got swept up in the energy of all the people that were doing it. And we have to make these small Buddha robes called a raksu, the form of them. It's a hand sewing project, and you chant on each stitch. And I didn't know how to sew. And so I was kind of learning how to sew. So I was way behind everybody. And it was time to turn them in. And I thought, well, I guess I'll skip it this time and do it next time. Suddenly, all these people swooped down and started helping me. And I remember that feeling of, wait, I'm supposed to be doing this myself. And then I realized that there's no reason why I had to be doing it myself. And actually, this is the way life is. We aren't in life alone. We are. I had this experience of being supported by others. I didn't even know most of these people, but they just came and started taking pieces and sewing them. And it was, and then when Jukai came, Jukai needs to receive the precepts. When that happened, I actually kind of I hadn't really thought through what I was doing. It was all kind of new to me, and I got swooped up in this energy. So I got into the middle of the ceremony, and we're reciting the precepts, and I'm thinking, wait, I can't do this. I wasn't thinking about this. I didn't know this is what this is about. But you have no choice. When you're in the middle of a ceremony with 30 other people, well, you do have a choice. I could have stood up and walked out or finished the ceremony. At that point, I had to let go. I had to let go of, I can't do this. And I was reading Kadagiri Roshi's discussion of the 10 prohibitory precepts. And he says, when you should receive the precepts often, he said, when you receive the precepts, you probably won't know what is happening, what it's about. And you'll feel like you aren't ready. But in some way, we know. And each time that we receive the precepts, the understanding of it becomes greater. It just kind of happens. And I think these 16 bodhisattva precepts, based on bodhisattva practice, based on bodhicitta, are just constantly a practice of letting go. In Buddhism, the precepts, the practicing the precepts is not a matter of defining good and bad. It's more returning to bodhicitta, recognizing that relationship that we're within, which means we have to let go of, I can't do this, or I don't know what this means, or we have to let go of making a definition and saying, this is good behavior and this is bad behavior. And just when we let go, we are in the present moment. And this, that's what happened to the pumpkins. They let go and they started realizing that relationship that they were within and that they were all part of the same life. They were all connected. They were all being fed by the same food. And, you know, Buddha talks about this as Indra's net. We're all part of this big net called life. And there's the individual knots in the net. And that's our human life or our individual life. But all these nets are all connected with each other. All these knots are connected with each other by a thread that we can't see. So because we can't see it, we don't often, you know, it's not where we go with our minds. Because we, as humans, we not want to have something to attach to, and our senses, including our mind as a sense, it likes to attach to ideas. If we can let go of those ideas, if we can let go of how we think things should be and just be present with things as they are, we recognize, just like those pumpkins did, we recognize that connection. And it's not, as Dogen Zenji says, it's not something that's part of the conscious mind. It's something that we experience, and when we experience it, the walls and fences and trees and grass and everything starts to expound about Dharma. Everything shows its true reality because we can see it. When we're not overlaying our understanding of life with our perceptions, we stop grasping, then we experience life as it really is. But it's not something that we understand. We can understand. It's only something we can experience. So how do we know we've had this experience? I once asked Kadagiri Roshi that question. I says, is it only something that we can see in retrospect? And he said, yes. It's not when we're present with something. And you know, the more we do meditation practice, the more familiar that experience becomes, even though it's not definable in the usual way that we explain things. But the experience of just being present is something we don't dismiss. As when we have an experience, what we do first, we don't even notice we're doing it most of the time, is we judge. Was that real or wasn't it? And I think when we first experience meditation, we don't judge that experience of oneness as real, because it's our mind is part of the whole experience. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it's not, our mind is not separate from the experience, so it's not something that we can see with our minds. So let's see, this in this section in Returning to Silence, where Kadagiri Roshi is talking about Shila. Shila is the precepts or morality. I actually last week I noticed that Koyama san made a distinction between Shila and Vinaya. Vinaya is the big body of precepts is usually taken by monastics. Actually, it's not a Mahayana practice, it's more of a Theravada practice. So in Dogen's tradition, monks and nuns receive the same precepts as lay people. Dogen said to say everyone, we all practice together. But the Vinaya is this big body of kind of rules that came out of the monks and nuns living together in Buddha's Sangha. And when there was a problem, they would, if you read the lives of the disciples, there would be a problem and someone would go to Buddha and say, this person is causing a problem. So then Buddha would say, okay, we shouldn't do this. Or maybe it was the acknowledgement by individuals that they had done something that created disharmony. But of course, when you're living together, those kinds of rules are very important and very valuable. But the Bodhisattva precepts, it says that when Buddha awakened, the precepts were there. When Buddha awakened, the precepts were there. And this to me goes back to the bodhicitta. And this is why I think, and Dogen goes back to it, when we let go of our perceptions, because when we attach them to our perceptions, we're always discriminating between ourselves and others. We're always judging things as real or unreal or good or bad. But when we let go of that and are able to be present, then the actions naturally follow the spirit of the precepts. And those 10 prohibitory precepts, I think if we recite them every day, Kadagiri Roshi says they should be part of our everyday life. If we recite them every day, they become part of our consciousness, part of our habit. And Shila, the word Shila means habit, to develop a habit. It comes from Sanskrit. So to form a habit of acknowledging and letting go of those perceptions that we attach to that can become harmful to others because of our attachment, because of our inability to see things, to see life in a broader perspective. So when Buddha awakened, the precepts were there. So this was long before Buddha's sanghas. Buddha started to teach after he awakened, and over time, a sangha, people started following him, and during the rainy season, they would all stay in one place and live together. And so that was the first, what is identified as the first sangha. But now, sangha, particularly in Mahayana, it's taken on a broader meaning. And so, the precepts, the Shila, are not the monastic precepts of the Vinaya. They're not the rules that came out of the lifestyle. They're what happens when we awaken. Teijo Roshi, one time I kept asking him, what does this word vow mean? Because I couldn't understand what he was trying to say when he used it. And it felt to me like something that I would impose on myself. And that was kind of what I understood from my Catholic upbringing. But I knew that wasn't what he was talking about. And so one day I asked him, and he said, he asked us all to close our eyes. And we closed our eyes, and he said, what, try to think back to the first time that you sat down in Zazen. Or one of the first times, and why did you continue to sit? What was it that that caused you to continue to follow this practice? And I immediately got in touch with something. It's a little hard to articulate, but the spirit of something that I wanted to cultivate in my life. And I knew exactly. And he says, that is vow. And I would say that is bodhicitta. That is why we came to this practice and what we want to cultivate in this practice. And it's easy to get trapped, in the practice, in ideas about the practice itself. Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche called it spiritual materialism. So, that's why in Soto Zen, beginner's mind is very much emphasized. Beginner's mind is nothing but returning to bodhicitta, returning to our original intention, our original vow, as Teijo Roshi said. Vow, he said, is our original intention. What is it that causes us to seek? So I think the basis of the bodhisattva vows is really bodhicitta. And if we recognize that, bodhicitta, what we're seeking, is not something outside of ourselves. That which we are seeking is what causes us to seek. That's how Sherry Huber puts it. That which we are seeking is what is causing us to seek. So bodhicitta causes us to seek, and also it's what we continue to seek for. And the difficult thing about it is it's not a tangible thing. It's letting go of all things tangible. It's those moments, and we can't. It's not something we can do. Although I do believe, from my own experience, it's by putting out the intention. As Teijo Roshi says, if we receive the precepts again and again, if we put out that intention over time, Dalai Lama describes karma. He says, if you get angry and you act out of that anger, and then you say, wait a minute, I shouldn't have acted out of that anger. That's good, he said, because recognizing that and stopping it is kind of backing off of the karma. And he says, you'll probably do it again and again. But each time, maybe one time you won't do it. Maybe one time that. And so this intention kind of grows in us. It's like watering a seed, cultivating a seed. So I guess that's all I really want to say about that. Does anybody want to say something? Or do you have some question about something I said? Or disagreement?
I'm bowing and I'm Cynthia. We have been part of the Mountain Mindfulness Sangha here in Asheville and are for the second time. I think it is the same. It's wonderful to, let me just speak my gratitude for your teaching, because we are at the moment now of going through our 5 mindfulness trainings for the second time, and the first time a year ago. And the 5 mindfulness trainings are part of, I think, the 16 precepts. They're a consolidation for the beginner lay people in the Plum Village tradition, and seem to coincide with what you're speaking of with the 16 precepts. And so for me personally, we had been reciting them monthly as a group for a couple of years before we decided to work with the larger Sangha out of the DC area to actually formally take the precepts, which were called vows. And so this word vow totally freaked me out once I'd gone through the same process of simply reading them and sharing about them and listening to the Sangha as they could relate those precepts to their lives, which was very important learning to bring it into the present for me. But the word vow, I couldn't do it, because we went through the whole 6 weeks and then we backed away because I know I can't live up to those vows. And in listening to you, it feels more like, oh, it's not like I have to live up to them. It's like I have to let go of my thoughts of what they mean, and that I have to impose it on myself. I have to let go of myself about it. And when you talk about the knot, that we are the knots in Indira's net, it almost feels like what I have to do here is loosen that knot. I have to loosen it, not untie it. But if you loosen a knot, then you can suddenly the entire network loosens and becomes more of one thing. So that metaphor somehow worked for me to feel like this is not a vow that I have to hold tightly around myself. This is a wonderful 5 ways of reminding myself of how to stay present. So why would I not want to do this? And then when you say, it's not this one-time thing that you wrap around yourself, you're just, you accept it. You use the word accepting the precepts. I think you use that word. And that turns it into a gift. Anyway, so thank you, because I think probably this time in 5 weeks, I will be in a much more open place about my Sangha and the teaching. So thank you.
Good. Thank you. Were you able to hear? I don't know. One of the reasons I started talking about bodhicitta and bodhisattva vows is that I was teaching out at Southern Dharma, and we were reciting the bodhisattva vows. And I wanted to kind of explain them because a lot of Americans have trouble with that word vow. And but the thing about the bodhisattva vows, sentient beings are numberless. I vow to save them all. Desires are inexhaustible. I vow to end them all. The dharmas are boundless. I vow to master them all. And the Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to it's unsurpassable. I vow to enter it, or something like that. They're impossible. That's the spirit of the bodhisattva, even though it's impossible. And that is letting go. Recognizing the impossibility of, for example, bringing peace to the whole world, and yet try to keep. And I always point to Thich Nhat Hanh and I say, look at what one person did for peace. You know, look what he got started. You know? So any one of us can do that. Thank you very much for your comment.
Thank you for reminding me why I first came to Great Tree. When you said when was the first time you sat, and it all came back in my mind. Thank you for taking us there. That was the beginner's mind. Yeah, I like that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. I know it worked for me, but I'm never quite sure it works for other people when I when I suggest it. But I can still go back there every time I talk about that. In my body, even. We're about to, in about a week and a half, we're going to have a very huge precept ceremony and study in California, in Los Angeles. And Chimio and I are both going to be part of it, and Trey also, and Brooke, again, you. And I've done it in the past. It was in Japanese with translation the last time I did it, but this time it's going to be all in English. So I've been thinking about it a lot, and you know, going through this kind of ceremony itself is a letting go practice, you know, and that's what took me back to my receiving of the precepts the first time, because somehow rituals, you know, you may resist a ritual at the beginning of it, but once you've actually stepped into it, there's the stepping in, the taking a step in is the letting go. It's really just taking that one step, and it's transformative. And I didn't even notice it about a month after I received the precepts. Kadagyu Roshi and I were talking just casually, and he said, "You've changed." And I said, "What do you mean? I don't know what you're talking about." And he was like, "Since you received the precepts, something has shifted." And I realized that it was true. And I can't even put my finger on it, but just, I think, taking the step into the unknown, because we're always stepping into the unknown every moment, but taking a step into the unknown of, I don't know if I can do this or not, or what does vow mean? You know, all of this is letting go. And the more that we do that, the more we can do that. And that's what our practice, I think, is really about. So are there any other thoughts?
Good morning. This is Norma bowing in, and so good to see you all. I'm just thinking about the transformation at different times in my life when I first learned TM. And I remember getting a mantra, and I was going through a very tough time in my life. And I remember that transformation in that 1 hour that I spent with this person. And my practice has changed, but I also remember so keenly when I received the 14 mindfulness trainings from Thich Nhat Hanh. And it brings me back to that all the time. Just that moment of that connection with him is just, there are no words really to describe how that feels. And I'm very grateful. So thank you for your talk today, and good to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you too, Norma. Thank you for those comments. Kate, you don't know? You don't know.
Yeah.
Kate is here with us. Kate, she's going to come over and say hello. Kate and Joe. Joe is here from New Jersey. So, any other comments? Yes,
I just
Joe.
have one esoteric question. You said that at the beginning you consider yourself a Taoist. That kind of shift occurred.
Did you hear the question? Okay, so Joe said he wanted to know about, I guess, the transition between Taoism and Buddhism.
Yeah, I think it's just because there's so much continuity. I'm thinking of people like Hong Kong, where they use a lot of terminology that's almost indistinguishable from Taoism. There's, you know, some differences with emptiness, non-dualism, things like that. How you have that journey that you kind of.
So he wants me to talk about kind of the connection for me between Buddhism and Taoism. And I mean, I was studying Taoism because I was really into dance and Tai Chi. And, but I also read the I Ching, and the I Ching is, does anybody that doesn't know what the I Ching is? Should I explain it? Okay. You don't know, Norma?
I know I can't explain it, but I have read the I Ching. So
Okay.
yeah.
Well, the I Ching is basically, I had yarrow stalks, and you count the yarrow stalks in a certain way. It's a little ritual, and it directs you to a reading. There's 64 combinations of lines, and anyway, it's kind of a little complicated way, but it really helps you let go. So if you have a question and you do this ritual, you know, by the time you're done counting these, and if you make a mistake, it won't work. And so then you realize your mind. So a ritual, I was doing this ritual every day, and I was keeping a chart of it. And I got this line, a very specific line, several times that said, find a teacher. And so, well, it's kind of a long story, but I ended up getting saved at a what do you call it? Revival. Yeah, a revival. And I was kind of looking for something at that time, and I got saved, and I was gonna go with those people. I went home and got packed, and went back the next day, and the tent was gone, and they were all gone. But I had some momentum, so I was gonna go out looking for a teacher. So I ended up, long story short, in San Francisco, and Katagiri Roshi arrived a few days later, and I was broke, so I had to get a job. And I ended up getting it through the Zen Center and heard Katagiri Roshi, and that's how I got into Zen. But I never really read anything about Buddhism much. And was never that interested in Zazen, because I don't like to sit still. I've never been able to sit still. But fortunately, none of my teachers particularly were concerned that I couldn't sit still. So I got the name Teijo, which means right stillness, which I thought was a joke, but Roshi thought it was a really appropriate name. And most of you have heard me say the center of the cyclone is very still. I don't know if that answers your question, but I do know that there was Zen, Chan Buddhism and Taoism. You know, it went from Taoism to Zen Buddhism. There were some. I know a particular Taoist nun that was also a Zen Buddhist nun. You know, a Chinese at that time. So there is a lot of influence there, I think. Although when I asked Katagiri Roshi about that very question, I said, isn't there a strong influence of Taoism? He said, no. Zen is Zen. Soto Zen is the purest form of Buddhism. So yeah, it was kind of there. But I feel like the way it's informed me is because there's so much interest in balance in Taoism, finding that balance. And I think it's there in Soto Zen, but it's not talked about a lot. Well, the middle way. But the way that it's talked about in Taoism, I think is a lot easier to embrace for me, because it's balance in everything, right down to the way we eat, you know. So that's the biggest influence for me. Plus Tai Chi, the body-mind balance. That's been important in Soto Zen practice, which doesn't talk enough, in my opinion, about body awareness. I've tried to include it more into this practice, but I think, and I know that in Thai's tradition, there is more body awareness. When I was at Plum Village, we had a day of mindfulness, and he gave a talk, and then right after, no, we had Zazen, and before he gave his talk, he stood up on, it was kind of a table or something, and led us through some exercises. And I thought, whoa, yeah, that's good. And then he gave his talk. And so I know that he's trying to bring that consciousness into it, but it's certainly not very present in Soto Zen. It's more of a push your body, kind of samurai approach, you know. So I've been affected in that way, you know, trying to find that body-mind balance, because there's, of course, in Taoism, it's there, you know. Yeah.
I'm not quite sure what the question is, but I'm thinking about the relationship between bodhicitta and the swirl of kind of breakdown and chaos that a lot of us are feeling in the world around us. And those are perceptions. I'm wondering if we are bodhicitta, can bodhicitta be disturbed by that? By so many of us are concerned about a lot of ways in which we feel like there's sort of a disintegration of togetherness happening. But if that's that's our perceptions clouding bodhicitta, can you ever really disturb bodhicitta?
Did you hear the question? No. She said, basically, if bodhicitta is kind of everythingness, right? Bodhicitta is like sunyata or emptiness. Can you really disturb it? Or she's talking about what you called it, chaos.
Yeah, disintegration and chaos.
And disintegration that's happening in our culture, you know, which of course is based on perceptions. All of it is based on perceptions. Yeah, and you know, Steve Hagen I think he wrote a whole book about this, the chaos theory. That and this is some kind of scientific theory. He showed me some pictures on a computer one time of the chaos theory, that you could not there is no such thing as chaos. It's just a kind of a different kind of order, and that that order keeps repeating itself. And I think if we think about it in that way, that really chaos is just a different way of things coming together, because really everything is interdependent, everything is impermanent, so everything is always changing. We're all changing together. And how do we find that harmony? You know, we create disharmony in our minds, you know, and then we fight, and then that creates an emotional reaction, you know. But when we let go of what we've created in our minds, you know the engaged Buddhists, you know how they work, they go to political leaders to talk to them, you know, and they're high profile people in the Buddhist world, like the Dalai Lama. Thich Nhat Hanh was part of that at one point. And they go and they talk about something they want to change. And first they ask for an understanding of why the political leader has this particular position, and then they really try to let go of their own perceptions and listen and repeat it, really sincerely listen. And then when the other person feels like they've been heard, then they say, can we present our position? I mean, basic conflict resolution kind of stuff. But, and, Sulak Sivaraska, who used to be the president of the Engaged Buddhists, he's a Thai man. He said, there were some times when it actually worked. And he gave some real examples of when it worked. But that spirit of letting go of the perception that you can't talk to this person, that's what I have trouble with, and finding that common ground. That's really bodhicitta. That's the bodhicitta. And that's the letting go, and that's the emptiness, I think it's called emptiness, shunyata, but I usually call it everythingness. And there's a book that I can't remember her name. She wrote about the teaching of emptiness, Nagarjuna's teaching of emptiness. And she said, actually, at the time of Nagarjuna, that emptiness was based on an earlier practice that was done by monks called sky meditation, which was, meditating on vastness. So that vastness means everythingness to me, and that interconnection, and that we are connected. And I think Shikantaza is the practice we do in Soto Zen. That's Dogen Zenji's practice. Well, it comes from China, but it means just sit. And my Katagiri Roshi used to say it means just sit down and shut up. And really, that's all we have to do. To not give ourselves something to do, because we're always wanting something to do, something to hold on to, but to just sit there and, I say, resist the compulsion to do something, And the way Thich Nhat Hanh talks about it, he says, if you take a walk without a destination, you have to at first resist that temptation to say, I'm going to do it for 10 minutes, or I'm going to do it for an hour, or I'm going to do a power walk, or I'm going to go from here to here, I'm going to do this loop. Just take a walk without destination. But he says, first you have to resist that inclination. So Shikantaza is like taking a walk without a destination. It's just, at first, we have to kind of not want something. And we used to ask Roshi, what should we be doing? And he wouldn't tell us. He would say, well, just return to your breath. And so when something comes up like, oh, I'm thinking too much, rather than create more thinking by saying, how can I stop thinking too much? What can I do? Rather, just take a deep breath. And my teacher in Japan said, just let it out slowly and quietly. And see, that relaxes your whole body, mind relaxation. So, okay. Okay, now we're right at 11 o'clock. So we're going to do the giving back the merit. Then I will do 3 prostrations, and we will have a formal exit. Okay. So, and then in about 10 or 15 minutes, I guess around 11:15, we'll start Zazen. Because by the time that's all over, it'll take about 5 minutes. Okay, and you can all stay for Zazen if you want to. So this is call and response, and since there's people in the room, you can respond, okay? May the merit of this practice benefit all beings and bring peace